We start with the crisis in the Karabakh region of Azerbaijan. Nearly all the estimated 120,000 ethnic Armenians living there have now fled to Armenia. Only a fraction have been left behind. The town square in Khankendi, also known as Stepanakert, is now deserted. Shops, homes and businesses have been abandoned. Azerbaijani forces have taken full control of the enclave and they've started installing road signs with new names. Let's go live to Al Jazeera's Osama bin Javed, who joins us from Khankendi, the main city in Karabakh. Just set the scene for us, Osama. Tell us about where you are and what it's like.
Folly, you've been seeing pictures from Khankendi in the last few days. Tens of thousands of people who had lined up the square with all that was they could carry with them. People who were in their cars were queuing up to leave outside and leave the city, but people who were here were waiting for buses, for their relatives, for others to come and take them with them, as they did not believe the assurances that were given by the Azerbaijani government that they will not be prosecuted. Here in the town center, if I go quiet, you'd be able to hear nothing. There is absolutely no one who's left here, apart from a few elderly, disabled and others. We did see some Red Cross workers who were here earlier, who were taking people, ferrying them away and taking them to a staging point from where they're going to take them into Armenia. That's what people want. Here, let me just show you. Here are some puppies who've been following us around, possibly looking for food. This is a hard to describe feeling on when you enter a town where you've been looking at pictures of it, where there was so much activity, but now there's nobody here. People have left with whatever there was. They've left the tea cups they were drinking from. They've left their children's strollers. All you can see are chairs. Here is a makeshift stove that they built so that they can enjoy some warmth because it gets cold in the evening.
Right.
But this is how we're seeing open pieces of luggage. People who couldn't carry things with them have left them behind. So here's what this looks like.
Yeah.
A ghost town which seems to have no soul left.
It's quite incredible what you're showing us there through your camera, Osama. As you say, it looks like a ghost town, but most importantly, it looks like people left in a rush. You know, the strollers, seeing some of the strollers there and the animals there. This was really a rushed exodus, it would seem.
It does appear to be that way. As we've been driving through this town, we've looked at open shutters, we've looked at cars where doors are open. So it does feel like this was an exodus. It feels like where people thought that they have to leave as quick as they can. Although we were hearing when we were outside of Khankendi from Azerbaijani officials that they're free to stay. They have nothing to fear. But you have to understand the history of the last 3 decades as well, because there's been so much hatred, so much violence. There's been so much that has gone on between these two sides that it was difficult for people to imagine what peace between the two sides would look like. And as you can see, as you said, it does appear that people just up and left, leaving everything behind them.
The town where you are now has been renamed Khankendi. It used to be known as Stepanakert, of course. And that's happening to other areas within the Karabakh region. The Azeris are renaming all these different towns now.
Yes, so the context of this is 30 years ago when Armenian forces came in, they renamed all of these areas with Armenian names. This used to be known as Khankendi. Other places like Khojaly and Kalbajar were also named with Azerbaijani names, but they were changed once Armenian forces took control of these areas and a self-declared state came into place. But now Azerbaijanis have come into administrative control. We've also been seeing ambulances to make sure that there is some sort of relief for people. We met the ICRC, we asked them, and they said that it is going to help them to ensure that the people who are left behind have some essential services available. The electricity, as you can see, the lights are still running.
Right.
The water is still running, although aid workers tell us that they can't be sure of the people who used to run the water supply are no longer here. And behind us is now the vehicle is left is where the Russian peacekeepers were stationed, because this was a staging point where people were gathering and leaving. But this is what a city without people looks like. It is scenes that we have never seen before, where such a huge mass of population got up and left, leaving all that they could leave behind with them and just taking their memories and all they could pack on their cars with them.
A city without people, you say, Osama. What does the Azerbaijani government and the authorities there, what are they planning on doing with this city and this region now that the entire population, it would seem, has left?
Well, what has been happening here is a lot of development. As you know, that there was a war in 2020 where a lot of this area was taken over by Azerbaijani officials. So on the way here, as we came here 3 years ago, and there were hardly any roads, there were hardly any streets that were properly built. But on the way to Khan Kendi in Shusha and other areas, there have been a lot of development in this area. So Azerbaijan says that it is going to build infrastructure. And that is why officials who we've been speaking to have been telling us that they would like people to stay. They would want people to stay. They wanted them to be part of what is going to be a rebuilding of this area, a massive investment in this area is what they call it. But again, it is going to be an Azerbaijani version of it. Yes, there are 120,000 people who've left from this area, but those officials tell us that this is an area which was home to more than 1 million Azerbaijanis who had to leave their homes 30 years ago. So now they're going to make preparations for them to come back. And all those people from the ethnic Armenian community who remain here are going to live side by side with them as Azerbaijani citizens.
Now, you saw the UN mission that's made its way to the Karabakh region. Tell us about what they're there to do exactly. What is their mission?
The United Nations has been allowed access, according to the Azerbaijani Foreign Ministry, after 3 decades in this area because they wanted to show the United Nations what Azerbaijan calls occupation, destruction, and illegal settlement building. And the UN mission has been here to assess what Azerbaijan wanted to show them and also assess the needs of the people on the ground. We saw them leave this area, so I'm not sure how much assessment they were able to do on the ground themselves, but we've been speaking to aid workers who've been here. But again, because there are not that many people left, so assessing the humanitarian need of a non-existent population seems like a futile task. So we will wait to hear from what the UN mission found, what they saw, what they plan to do with this area. But Azerbaijan says that it is adamant to allow whoever wants to come here and see for themselves that this is an area which is open for people to live, and it is going to be secure, at least for now, because the conflict has ended and Azerbaijani forces are going to be in control of not just the border of the city of Khan Kendi and the Nagorno-Karabakh region, but also all the way to the Lachin corridor and the border with Armenia as well. We did hear some reports earlier in the day from witnesses who described scenes and accused Azerbaijani forces of excesses and forced displacement. But everyone we've spoken to here in this city, including the ICRC workers, they tell us they have found no real cases where people were actually forced out of their homes or had to face any abuse or trampling on their rights by these forces. But again, this is early days. We're the only crew which are here, apart from horses and dogs and a few Armenians who are packing their things and getting ready to leave. There's nobody here.
Nobody there. If you're just joining us on Al Jazeera, exclusive access to the town and city of Khan Kendi with Al Jazeera's Osama bin Javed, one of the first journalists to reach that town in the Karabakh region of Azerbaijan. And from what you can see from Osama's images there, a ghost town, an empty town where nearly all of the population, in fact, has now fled to Armenia. the ethnic Armenian population of the Karabakh region. Osama, you were telling us that the Azerbaijani authorities, the plan they have for this region now is to have Azeris and ethnic Armenians living side by side. But as we've said, and we've been reporting on Al Jazeera for a number of days now, almost all the ethnic Armenians have fled to Armenia. And the question now is, would they ever want to come back to this region? What assurances is the Azerbaijan government giving them to perhaps make them want to return one day?
Well, that is the big question, isn't it? That as you see what is around us, it feels that people have abandoned not just a city, but also hope. It appears that people have left in a way where they don't see a future coming back to this area, where they feel that they have had to leave and uproot themselves once again and go towards an uncertain future. And that is why it is going to be extremely important for Azerbaijani forces to make sure, and the administration, to make sure that the people who are here have the confidence to live here side by side as Azerbaijani citizens with full rights. But the question about the right to return is probably going to be addressed in the next few weeks and months, because Azerbaijan says that the right to return, the immediacy of the right to return is with the Azerbaijani population, which was uprooted 30 years ago. So there's a massive demining operation. You have to realize that almost 1 million hectares is estimated to be contaminated with unexploded munition, mines, and remnants of the war. So that has to be cleared out. Roads and infrastructure, pipelines have to be made. There has to be administrative control. Bodies have to be set up to allow people to come back to these areas. So the right to return for the Azerbaijani population in what we've been speaking to officials is probably going to be addressed first, but they also have set up a portal where people will be able to register themselves. The ethnic Armenians should be able to register themselves. There is a special working group that has been set up with Azerbaijani officials in charge to make sure that these people will have economic, they will have social, and they'll have humanitarian needs who will be addressed. But again, this is early days. This is the first pictures that you're seeing from this town, which until a few days ago was bustling with people.
First exclusive pictures from Al Jazeera's Osama bin Javed in the Karabakh region of Azerbaijan, reporting there live from Khan Kendi, which was previously known as Stepanakert. Osama, thank you very much for your excellent reporting. Thank you. A United Nations mission is visiting the enclave to determine the humanitarian needs of the remaining residents. Joining us now on the News Hour is Marco Succi, who's the Rapid Deployment Standing Team Manager at the International Committee of the Red Cross. Thank you for joining us from Khan Kendi, also known as Stepanakert, in Karabakh. Thank you. Can you tell us first your initial assessment of the situation there? It's a very desolate scene behind you in that city. What's the humanitarian situation like?
Good afternoon. Yes, as you know, since the military escalation last week, dozens of thousands of people have been crossing into Armenia, and the square that you see behind me is very representative, is reflecting what is happening. So most of the population has left. Hospitals are empty. Water board are not personnel also left. The director of the morgue also left. Our main concern is, of course, looking after the most vulnerable and helping, in particular, the wounded in the treatment or being evacuated.
Who is left in the city, Marco?
Exactly the people we are concerned about. I mean, the elderly, the disabled, those who don't have any family, relative, and that's exactly what we are looking for. We have several teams that since days are going house to house, trying to find may need any assistance. Those with a medical condition have been evacuated in cooperation with all the authorities, including Azerbaijan, Armenia, the de facto authorities, and of course the Russian peacekeepers.
Do you have a sense of how many people are left there and what their needs are right now? You say, of course, you're looking after the most vulnerable, you're looking for the most vulnerable. What are the needs on the ground right now?
It's difficult to estimate how many people have left in the city. For sure, what we can see touring the city is self-explanatory. Maybe a few hundreds people have left, and with the social services still working for the time being, but the healthcare system completely not collapsing, but without any personnel is, of course, this represents a major need for the population remaining here. Also, the need to connect those who left, who are left in the city and the region with their family relatives. That's another major need. So, reestablishing the family links. The missing during the last military escalation, that's another concern, humanitarian needs. The food provision and medicine, medical supplies for those remaining are, of course, among the priorities for us.
Yeah, those are the priorities for you. As you say, a few hundred people left there. Can you give us a sense of what sort of cooperation and how you're working with the local authorities, the Azerbaijani authorities, in making sure that these people are taken care of?
ICRC have been in the region for the last at least 3 decades. So we have always been cooperating with all concerned authorities, and we are cooperating and will be cooperating in the near future to make sure all the humanitarian needs are met. So we don't see any issue in that regard. What we are concerned about is, as I said, that the most vulnerable are not left behind. Those who have been separated by their loved ones, those who remain in town, the disabled, the elderly, and the wounded. So we are here exactly for that reason. And we are among, if not the only humanitarian organization in the region. So it's crucial, it's critical that we keep doing our job.
Thank you so much, Mr. Suchi, for taking the time to speak to us about the situation there in the Karabakh region. Marco Suchi is from the International Committee of the Red Cross, joining us there from Khan Kendi.